It's my great pleasure to introduce our key speakers. And the first one that I'm going to be introducing is Meredith Adler. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Meredith now for a number of years. I'm gonna try to do her justice with a little bit of a bio, but you'll see why that might be difficult to do. So she's the executive director of Student Energy, which is a global youth-led organization that creates next generation of energy leaders who are kind of working on accelerating the transition to a sustainable future. That sounds great, but you actually learn what they're doing, how they're doing it. It's pretty eye-opening. And I know Meredith was kind of focusing on this leadership and youth leadership component. I think long before it became vogue to try to say that. I think with Greta Thunberg and this broader kind of youth strikes that's become, I think, thank goodness, right smack in the dap of everybody's radar. Meredith was working on that before. And she kind of is one of the few people I think who's helped me realize the difference in early career and youth perspectives. So great thanks to you for that, Meredith. So right now she's overseeing the strategy and the operation of an organization that she's helped build. They've got over 50,000 committed students in sustainable energy from over 120 countries around the world. They're working on developing the youth's capacity to be change agents while working in the industry of energy, government, and organizational development to create a space for intergenerational collaboration. Really exciting stuff. Under her leadership, Student Energy was actually named one of the top 50 youth solutions in the world, delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. And her personal energy and leadership has actually been recently recognized in Women in Renewable Energy as Woman of the Year in 2018, as a Clean 50 Emerging Leader, and as a 2020 YWCA Women of Distinction Award. Meredith, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for what you've done in terms of educating me along the way about how to understand youth, not be condescending to that, and actually be open to the insights and the leadership that they have readily at their fingertips. So Meredith, over to you, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Seth. I didn't know you had the bio, but that sounds great. And I don't know if I have control of the presentation here. Rachel, you can go ahead. Perfect. So thank you so much for the introduction, Seth. I'm really excited to accept this invitation to talk to ICSI. I think infrastructure engineering are some of the key challenges of our time, or key solutions really to the challenges of our time. And so it's great to be here today with all of you. I'll take just a second to explain student energy and unpack a couple of those terms that Seth threw out there in the beginning, and then would love to chat with all of you more about youth engagement, what that could look like for ICSI, and any questions you might have around what is the purpose of engaging young people, especially in this work. So just to give you a little purview on student energy, so as Seth said, we're a network of 50,000 youth in over 120 different countries who are focused on becoming the next generation of energy leaders. And particularly what student energy works on is bringing together diverse groups of young people. So we take a very broad scope at the definition of energy. So anything that uses energy, transportation, infrastructure, even some food systems, pieces like that. We're really focused on teaching these system skills that are essential to kind of transforming these larger systems. So taking a very broad purview of this. If I could go to the next slide, please. And I believe our origin story will be pretty interesting to all of you. So student energy actually started back in 2008, 2009, when a group of young people were going to school at the University of Calgary and working actually in the oil and gas industry in Calgary, Alberta. And so for any of you who are familiar with Canada, that's really the heart of Canada's tar sands. And so but they were all kind of doing this work, but very interested in sustainability and very interested in talking about climate change and those types of things. But in 2009, one did not really speak of that much in boardrooms in Calgary. And so, and they were getting invited to these big conferences, but really feeling like they had a seat at the kids' table, like nobody would answer their questions or take them seriously. And so they decided to throw our first ever International Student Energy Summit, which just was a big summit, but brought together 350 students from 30 different countries to really talk about the future of energy, but with some big keynote speakers like Vicente Fox, Ralph Sims from the IPCC. And so that was really our first taste of what could happen when you get young people in the room. And a disproportionate amount of young people from that conference went on to be energy entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs doing large things with big companies or at the UN. And so the whole group thought, well, was that just a one-off, or could we do this again? Is this something that's really important? And the conference ran again in 2011. It was bigger, better, more inspiring, more empowering. And that really led to the formation of Student Energy. So as Seth mentioned, we've been, I guess we're getting into our 12th year of having this network, of being on top of kind of the youth innovation piece. And there's a lot of different things that we've learned along the way. And now what we're really focused on, if you can go to the next slide, is our theory of change, which is really about how do you prepare young people with what they need to feed into the building blocks of a sustainable energy future. And so we really work on two ends pretty equally. One is around change agents, and I recognize that's kind of a big buzzword these days, but really around empowerment of young people, education, building skills, and helping them to find their community of people who are interested in this work as well. And then the other piece is around space for youth to act, is around working with governments and companies and organizations to help them understand what is the value of youth, what's the value of youth innovation, and how can that be leveraged to meet some of our big climate and energy goals. Because ultimately what we found with the conferences and other pieces is that we were launching young people into the world, but sometimes they were hitting a brick wall. Sometimes they were really talented people who were put in a corner with a bunch of spreadsheets and not able to move further. And so we realized that we need to also shape institutions to be more ready to think differently. And if you can just go to the next slide. And I will tell you a little bit more about our program. So over the last 10 years, we don't just run summits anymore. Although the summit has moved its way around the world, it's like the Olympics. Students bid to host it, and then the winning team gets to put together an organizing committee, and somebody has referred to it as the Tiger Lottery. They now organize a conference for over 700 students from over 100 different countries. And so it's become the largest summit in the world for students on energy. But we also have a whole ecosystem really aimed at filling in those gaps for young people to be able to take action on energy in all of its different forms. And this is really getting at the gap that exists between a university education and really being able to be effective within industry. And I think probably all of you can attest to the mentor or someone who helped you move pieces along for your career and become a good systems thinker. It's really that system thinking skills are not being taught. And so what we do is we really focus on that experiential education, the community building, all of the pieces that you need to really become effective at a young age. And so that looks like a chapters program. We have chapters all around the world. We do research with the Global Youth Energy Outlook. And we have an energy transition specialist course launching. So tons of different programs really aimed at getting people the skills that they need and meeting people where they are at. We're very focused on a youth empowerment model that allows for young people to decide what it is that they're interested in, and then Student Energy really acts as the backbone support to take the lead time out of them being able to take action on energy. And I'll get to why that is important with youth innovation. If I could just go to the next slide here. So what is youth innovation? I've been throwing this term around, and so there's a few different things to say about it. One is that young people's brains are really hardwired for innovation. So there's some neurological science behind this, but before you're 25, you just have more synapses that are actively firing in new directions. You haven't solidified your path as much. And so youth innovation is really about harnessing that thinking and really that ability to see different connections. And so what I'll share with you is that we have lots of different success stories from Student Energy, but one is from Brian Kikimbo, who was a young entrepreneur, I guess, at our summit in Bali in 2015. And he came to our summit and was meeting with a speaker and said, what could I do on energy? I'm a business student. I don't think there's anything for me here. I'm not an engineer. And the speaker was like, well, you're from Africa. There's trash everywhere. You should probably do something with that. And that really left off and got Brian thinking about, well, what could he do in his community, and ended up coming home to found a waste energy youth project, which is a whole business now with 12,000 customers, all aimed at filling in this gap that exists for young people in the global south, around both having entrepreneurship opportunities, but also it is a great, it's a great example of youth innovation in that young people are very embedded in their communities, so they're really able to see what needs to be done. So he could see where there was youth unemployment. He could see that there is a need for more clean cooking opportunities in his community, and kind of put all these pieces together with the mentorship from Student Energy and launch a business. So that's really what we're talking about, is young people's unique ability to make new connections, and then also their unique ability to really embed themselves within communities to make things happen. If we can go to the next slide here. So I'm running a little bit behind, so I won't go too much further into this. But the real place where the rubber hits the road is in intergenerational collaboration. So there's a lot of thinking around glorifying the young entrepreneur, the 30 under 30, et cetera, et cetera. But really, when you unpack all of those stories, they all go back to intergenerational collaboration. Who was their mentor? Who was working with them? Who helped them get these ideas? And the piece is really taking that youth innovation, that unique brain mindset, and leveraging it to with kind of 30 years of knowledge, with people who already know how to build bridges or pour cement or what have you, and making sure that those people are kind of, you're putting together those two pieces, both young people who are pushing the dial and have that ambition, and then people with experience who are able to point them in the right direction, because there's no way to unpack everything that an industry knows on your own at the age of 20. It's impossible. But when you put the two pieces together, you can have really strong impacts. I'll just go to the next slide here. And so I was asked to answer this question, what's effective youth engagement? Effective youth engagement is really about picking a shared objective that you sincerely want to work with young people on, and making a plan and sticking to it. It's no more than that. It's about committing to work that you're going to do together, and then being open and honest and transparent in doing that. And I answer this question ahead of time because often people are really scared of working with young people. They don't know what's coming at them. But this is a really important piece, is it's not that hard. It's just about being a good business partner like you would be with anyone else. And then I think we can move on to this next piece here. And then what could this look like for ICSI? So Seth and I have had a few chats about ICSI. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. But one big piece that we're doing with Student Energy is the idea of shadow boards, is the idea of creating groups of young people who are working with established professionals to really move and change mindsets. And just like Rachel was talking about earlier in her presentation, there's a lot of shifts that need to happen. 70% of the world's carbon is a big number. And so there's a huge opportunity to really pursue intergenerational collaboration to both help transform engineering and help transform how some of these things are done, but also to think about equity, to think about who's traditionally been left behind in this industry. And while it's important to get people on boards and kind of do this at an executive level, it's actually even more important to think about who are you harnessing in the beginning of their career, who are you helping to build their future, and how are you helping to reshape what an industry looks like. And so all of that is actually easiest done from the ground up, and really through pursuing intergenerational collaboration.